I can answer that.
What? Who are you?
I'm Professor Science.
Science? That's a queer last name. Are you a commie?
No, I'm a professor of science with a PhD in fun.
But Professor Science, what is science?
Well, Billy, science is all around you. It's what keeps this desk on the ground and makes this tree grow tall.
But the wind, Professor Science, is that science?
Now you're getting it.
We were huge. No one could touch us, and you know why? Because it was science.
For over 40 years, the Professor Science Show entertained millions of children the world over. Here, we take a look behind the camera at the show that defined 4 generations.
Professor Science was born out of a half-hour radio show I was doing called Professor Science Does Experiments. And eventually, I convinced a group of men to finance the show, which eventually became Professor Science.
The most prominent of these men was the eccentric producer Claude Van de Graaff, who was criticized for his unethical motivational methods.
If there's one man in this world that besides Dustin Hoffman, who I'd want to beat the hell out of, it was Claude Van de Graaff.
Oh, what do I remember about my dad from the set when I was a kid? Really, he was just the nicest guy in the world. It definitely gave off just an A+ demeanor, hugging everybody. And he always had an empty glass bottle. I don't know why. I think he just liked to carry straws in it sometimes.
If you mess something up, he like throw it at you. And I mean, he broke bones. He killed a guy once.
We knew that the star of the show was gonna be science. But we knew I had to explain the science to somebody.
My mother took me to audition for the Gerber Baby ad. And when I was at the set, I saw this group of kids. And I was like, hey, who are those kids? So I went over to talk to them. But they all started fighting and hating each other. And then I saw this man, this tall man. And I said, what are they doing? And he said, they're fighting. And I said, well, what's that up? What is that?
And I thought, this is a boy I can teach things to. I can show him how the world works, and he'll be better for it. I could not have been more wrong.
I'd been on the show since it started back in 1957. He and I bonded really early in the show because, you know, he came on and he was kind of an outcast, and I came on and nobody liked me, and so we just kind of bonded. We never really talked, but we exchanged glances where he'd look at me. He would do one of these, you know.
With the show cast and the money spent, the Professor Science Show opened with the highest ratings. Young and old, America loved Professor Science.
I've been watching Professor Science since I was 5 years old. I've been watching it every day of my life. I've watched it for the past 11,482 days.
And people were just amazed because it wasn't special effects. They didn't even have special effects back then. It was just special.
You can't spell excitement without science. As I got older, I hit puberty, which is science.
And we don't really know what happened, but he hit puberty hard.
What the hell do you do with a kid like that? Damn.
Only 2 years after he hit puberty, tragedy befell young Billy when his parents died in a freak balloon accident. With nowhere to go, they turned to the one man who could give them a home.
I slept in the studio. That was how they paid me. They would let me sleep in the set at night. They would let me sleep on the desk.
The hits just kept coming for the Professor Science Show, and soon they faced their first lawsuit.
Apparently, winning an Emmy does not get you off the hook when it comes to showing children exactly how to ingest LSD.
The LSD episode, it was a lot of fun. We all had a great time with it. Little Billy didn't.
Bad science.
We had a fan mail segment of the show where Little Billy would even struggle to read these cute letters.
He would hold the letters up and just talk because Billy really didn't know how to read. So most of the letters dealt with questions about how letters worked.
It just so happened that while he was sending the responses back, he found these 2 Scooby-Doo stamps, and he licked them.
Then, from what the cameras could capture, Billy went into some sort of wicked rage. He claimed that there was a witch in his head. Now, personally, and I'm not just saying this because of the court case, I think a witch did crawl inside of his head.
Fans of the show were not happy, and neither were the California State Police.
We'd been to court before over various FCC violations or human rights violations, murder. But this was by far the worst.
Professor Science, he stood up and he just shouted over everyone one single line. He said, "It's science." We won the case.
Despite their victory in court, the show is not out of the woods yet. In a desperate attempt to reconnect with the audience, Claude Vandergraaf began booking celebrity guests for each episode.
I'd have to take my shoes off to count them. I mean, literally, it goes beyond this many.
Mickey Rourke.
We had Burt Bacharach,
We had hired Donovan to come.
that guy who played Cheech in the Cheech and Chong movies. What was his name? Cheech?
It was Bob Dylan.
I loved when Miss Piggy and Mark Hamill came over from the Muppet Show. It was wonderful because it was both puppets and space.
Things were looking up, but Mother Nature is a cruel mistress.
One of the staples of the Professor Science TV show was my hair.
That's the reason that our faithful viewers tuned in. For science and for hair.
When I was younger, I had this big, curly, fro-looking thing. The fans loved it. One day, there was a chemical reaction on the show, and my hair got straightened out. It went completely straight. And so, they ended up giving me a haircut, which people didn't like either, because with the puberty and then the haircut, people were really starting to think the show had gone downhill.
As tensions rose backstage, the crew did their best to keep their audience. They failed.
I don't see why the public stopped liking the show. I think it's just the public changed to the point where they can't appreciate a show like Professor Science anymore.
On May 23rd, 1997, Professor Science hung up his lab coat for the last time.
But the last episode made history for network television. It was the only show to ever be canceled midway through an episode.
We got about 5 minutes in.
And then they said, "That's a wrap." And I said, "Well, what about the rest of the show? We still have Dolph Lundgren."
They put up that TV test bar with the beep until the half hour was up and the next show came on, and I just sat in front of my TV wondering where Professor Science had gone.
I think the saddest moment was 2 days later when they tore down the Professor Science set and they kicked poor Billy out into the street. They wouldn't let him live there anymore. He came knocking on my door and he said, "Professor Science, how do I keep the rain off my head? I said, Billy, you put a roof over it. She said, a roof? Is that science? I said, yeah, now you're getting it, Billy. He said, Professor Science, will you give me some science? I said, that's not my job anymore, Billy. Goodbye. I shut the door on him.
I am 54 years old, and 40 of those years were dedicated to the Professor Science TV show, and that's not something you easily forget. It was the greatest times of my life. I would give anything in the world to do a Professor Science reunion episode.
I don't think reunions have much to do with science. If we were to do another episode, we'd have to find a different topic.
If you want to talk about dreams coming true, let's talk about Professor Science on Ice. It was the most splendid performance of ice science I have ever witnessed in my life.